Okay, we're going live now. I hit the wrong button previously, but we're now live on the right channel. So again, good morning, good evening, good night to everyone in the world, wherever you are. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Mr. David Horvath, who is one of the co-creators, along with his wife, Sunmin Kim, of Ugly Dolls, Bossy Bear, Nooper, and a whole bunch of other really wonderful, colorful characters that have found their way into the blockchain and onto the Ethereum metaverse. So they're now being sold as NFTs. And David has brought his... Oh, my volume's going crazy. Let's just turn that down. Technical. Good morning, David. Let's just jump straight in. How are you?
Thank you
How are you?
for having me. Thank you. Very, very good. Very good. I hope all's well there.
Absolutely. No, all's well here. I'm over in Australia and you're over in the US, and we've somehow managed to make these time zones work today. So firstly, I just wanted to say, like, everyone I've chatted to in the lead up to this stream and just everyone I've interacted with in this growing community around Ugly Dolls just loves what you're doing, what you and your wife are doing. It's just bringing so much joy and fun, I think, to what we do as like collectors. And it's kind of the whole NFT space has really expanded on what blockchain does, hasn't it?
Right, right. Well, even connecting with you in the first place was thanks to, NFT artwork and the NFTs in general. 6 months ago, I had no idea that we would be in this or what this really was at all. And it's been something that I've actually dreamed that would be true in some form. And just now that it's here, it's for me personally, it's quite unbelievable. The idea that a digital artist can offer originals is mind-blowing, and I still can't get over it. I try to explain it to everyone who will just listen. And then, the connections that we've made with people was a huge, unexpected, I used to call it a bonus, and now it's the overriding theme, and it's the part that I enjoy the most. We went from the world being in this terrible situation for quite some time, and a large amount of uncertainty and being disconnected, to suddenly connecting with so many was quite nice.
That's been one of the major themes for me just in the last few months. And I've got to say, like, we've been exceptionally lucky here in Australia and especially in Queensland with regards to coronavirus and everything that's entailed. So it's not so much in relation to that for us, or for me anyway. It's more just that for something so technologically advanced, I guess, blockchain and this kind of very abstract concept of a world computer and everything, it's at the core of it far more human, I think, than I've found social media to be, for instance. Like, something dawned on me the other day that there's just a real lack of this kind of social engineering algorithms, like if you like this, then you'll like that. And we're going to pair you with this person. Like, that seems to be very absent. And so the connections seem to happen a lot more organically in this space. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I always thought I was just not very good at social media, if that term is a term that's proper to use. We through Ugly Doll, we used social media to connect to a lot of our fans. So Facebook early on was very useful. There were all these special Ugly Doll rooms where I could easily just tell the 200 or 300 people who cared the most, like, hey, we're going to be doing this show in San Francisco, or hey, we're going to be doing a show in Tokyo. And then some of them would actually fly out and show up because of those connections. But then, especially as it transitions to Instagram, I felt like I was sort of posting images and broadcasting, but not really connecting. And maybe that's just on me. Maybe others have found connections using, Instagram, etc. I just felt more like I was just kind of posting pictures, and my follower number was always kind of exactly the same for the last 5 or 6 years. It was like 8,000 something, and then I would post something and it would go down by 10. So I would have to,
Right.
I could get 10 back by not posting anything. So I don't know if that's the way it's supposed to work, but either way,
It's a funny one, isn't it? I've noticed a lot of people, a lot of artists especially, moving over from Instagram to Twitter and kind of going, oh, oh wow, things are
right.
happening here, and I can engage and I can earn a living and I can progress and collaborate and not just kind of have to feed the algorithm, but actually I've noticed a lot of creative satisfaction coming from at least the people I'm interacting with. It seems like there's just been this huge pent up. One of the artists I spoke to talked about there being just this huge amount of pent up creative energy that's finding its release now, which is a fascinating kind of concept. But one I'm all for. It's great.
The Twitter aspect. Before Twitter was sort of where we connected to some fans in Japan. I don't know how long it's been, maybe 20 years ago or so. We did this character for a album. This is a CD album.
Wow.
And we did a character. His name is Uver Chan, and he was the official mascot of this boy band in Japan that was coming out through Sony at the time, Uver World. And I listened to their music, and they did the theme song for an anime that was popular back then called Bleach. Maybe it wasn't 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. I don't remember. But so we did this character for them, and then the band became just huge, right? So now, this many years later, almost 20 years later, Twitter was my connection to them. So I would post images of that bear a couple times a year, and it'd just be this enormous spike in activity. And I would usually do it when I heard there's a Uver World reunion tour or they have a new album or something. But then I just kind of used Twitter for news. And then I was very happy that they were even paying attention. It was really fun, but it wasn't really a connection, nor was I expecting to find one there, or any of these places, really. I find connections just with friends that I've had forever, and my kids and my wife, and those were, there's that. Right. And then all of a sudden, Twitter, through the NFT art world, became genuinely like a real point of connection that I was unexpected. It's really great. Where to the degree where I really worry, like when we're releasing something or preparing something, I'm truly concerned. Like, what are they going to get out of this, and what are they going to think, and it's been very interesting. Today I had a very interesting back and forth almost all day with people about the energy expenditure of NFTs.
Yeah, hot topic. Yeah.
I realized at the end of the day, I don't usually do that. I think 2 years ago when our Ugly Doll movie came out, people were saying how bad it was, and I think I stuck up for it for the first few hours. I don't remember. But that was my only interaction with Twitter, back and forth with people in a similar way. But then I realized after about 8 hours, I wasn't really, I was responding to these people, but I realized I might have been bothering all of my followers this whole day. Like we went from a couple of followers to almost 4,000 or 3,000 or something.
Wow.
And I realized, they might see all of that, and it might be out of context, and that must really be bothersome. So I really started to actually worry. And then I was asking my wife and my daughter, does Twitter work that way, where every time I say something, you get a ding, ding, ding thing in your notification? And they were like, yeah. Well, my daughter was like, that's how it works. So
yeah, if someone's got their notifications on for you.
Sorry about that. Yeah. No, well, I'm all done. I actually watched a YouTube video on answering Twitter, and I realized, this is a known do not do thing. So I won't answer anybody anymore.
We're all learning. Hey, we're all learning in this new world. I just want to say good morning to Sonia, Shana, Creative Frame, Nirabun, people watching from all over the place. That's really nice. Someone's asking, are any more kaiju characters coming out? They need one.
That's like actual physical kaiju, or do you mean like NFT kaiju themed?
I'm not sure. They're just asking, cannot wait to get a piece of your work. Any more characters coming out? Are you doing any more now that you've moved into NFTs? Are you still doing more physical books, toys, things like that, or are you focusing far more on the NFT world now?
Before the pandemic, we were, especially the last 2 years, from 2000, Since 2014, really, we've been extremely focused on making toys in Japan in very limited numbers. The kaiju comes from just a general type of toy called sofubi, which is like soft vinyl figures that they make in these very tiny, exclusive special factories just outside of Tokyo with very high grade materials. And because we haven't been able to be there physically, we haven't been able to work in that medium. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm really worried about our friends there, and in Japan right now, they're having a very hard time, and the Olympics possibly being canceled, and my friends want the Olympics to be canceled. So we'll see. I think when things return to normal, hopefully someday, normal enough to make more, we shall see. But kaiju NFTs, yeah, sure, why not? I will say that we're very mindful about, and I may be jumping around too much, but we're really mindful on and careful. Talking a lot about spending a lot of time on how much we put out and how often. And actually, all we really wanted to do, like by now, we thought all we would be doing is going back to these trading cards that we've been slowly putting together. They're not really trading cards, but like NFT cards. We've been making them for some time, and just we thought that by now OpenSea would have switched to Matic Polygon. And well, Polygon is the company and the currency, but Matic and that would enable us to be able to offer multiples of the same thing. But that kept getting pushed. I guess I can see on the Discord they're working on the beta version of it, and it's coming soon. Now it's coming super soon. But in the meantime, we've had to kind of move around the things that we had just planned for later, because we really wanted to just focus on those cards once we can. So it does seem like a lot, probably to most, but on the other hand, that's kind of it. After this Friday, then we've got a few soul pets that we'll do, but we're taking our time with those, and then the cards, which is maybe like 10 new ones every Friday or so, was what we were hoping to be able to accomplish. If you'll have us.
So that'll become like a regular kind of every Friday, something to look forward to. A new Sunmin and David drop.
As long as it's fun for everybody. If everyone's like eye roll emoji, here comes 10 more cards on Friday, then no, we'll think of something else.
I don't know, these things have been going like hotcakes, David. They sell out in seconds sometimes. Like before you even drop them, they're gone half the time. It's incredible how quick they're going.
Did
that surprise you?
Yeah, because in the beginning, it certainly did not go that way. We were really excited about this, and we were really excited about NFTs because it was the idea that I can finally offer original artwork, right? That as someone who works digitally, I was very grateful to be invited to all of these gallery shows that we've been in over the last 20 years. A giant robot would invite us to do solo shows or be part of group shows, and my wife's an amazing painter. I love her paintings, but I always kind of had to hang a print next to her on a physical wall. There was no way for me to offer, like I would offer a print and then I would like make a black and white drawing so you'd have a black and white drawing rough version and then the finished thing as a print together as a set, but it still wasn't, it was like Pinocchio versus a real boy, if that makes sense. Like I always felt like my work was the wooden puppet, not quite real, right? And it didn't. A very close friend of mine is Gary Baseman, who's a very famous Los Angeles pop artist and painter. And I would go over to his house, and he has these beautiful paintings everywhere. And I was always envious that he could just express himself directly onto the surface and then display it the way he intended, and it would be appreciated by those who cared, in the right setting. Or I really always envied that. And then I used to think, oh, that's silly. What's the difference? They're walking into the room and they're looking at it and they see what it is that you wanted to say. And isn't that the important thing? So I would kind of focus on that. But once this came along, it was like, this is it. I can offer the idea that you can offer an original digital work of art, and that and that there are others who can make that mental leap to appreciate it that way was really something. So in the beginning, I found this one. Well, I went to the Facebook once I figured out what this was. I went to the Facebook group of Ugly Doll fans, and that's where I would go if we had a new plush doll coming out or some movie news or whatever it was. I could tell them, and they were the most excited to hear. Right. Versus Instagram, where I put out stuff and I don't know who's listening, if those are bots or I don't know what, right? Um, and I put this out there, and it was like, oh well, but MetaMask and the usual, like what is all this new language that you're putting out there? I don't.
It's a
They
lot
didn't
of
quite.
new lingo. It really is a foreign language. And I think sometimes you kind of forget that, yeah, actually, you have to really break down these terms for people who aren't like aware or involved in blockchain. It's, yeah, it is a learning curve.
Oh yeah, it was for me. So I tried to explain it as simply as possible that this is me being able to offer an original to you for the first time, and I'm so excited because you guys are the ones that I wanted to, like. Hopefully, you would be excited about interfacing with it in this way, even if you just stop to look at it. So some were like, "Well, what's the difference if I'm looking at it online from my home? Isn't it the same as looking at it through Instagram or something?" Right? So I had to explain the difference, and some of them wanted to get on board with it, but they just that leap of then getting the scary app onto your phone or on your computer and involving money in the exchange with cryptocurrency. There was a lot of steps, right? Two of the
Yes.
200 two of the 200 fans were right away. I think one of them, this fantastic guy and his family, they've been huge fans for the whole time, for 20 years. And he was already well versed in crypto everything. And he
Would that be
went
JC? Because I think he's just
to
joined us
JC.
on. He's
Hi,
here in the
JC.
chat. Yes. Good morning, JC.
Oh,
Thanks for
excellent.
joining us. Yeah.
JC is the was just essentially the first Ugly Doll or our NFT collector of our work at all, right?
Wow.
And there were a couple others who came in, and then a couple of random ones who stepped in, and then it was Strawberry by the username of Strawberry. I love all the usernames; it's like Tron. But he found us. He knew, I guess, who we were, or at least what we had done in the past, and then broadcast his findings out on Twitter. And then a couple others found us, and it's just kind of snowballed over a couple days. And since everything that we put up there, it goes. And every time I post something, honestly, I think this is the last this is the last time it'll do that, because that's not sustainable. And yeah, then we get in the whole conversation of, well, on one hand, we were reading, oh, I missed it again, I couldn't get one. So we wanted it to be fun for everyone, but we also want collectors to feel like we're bringing. I want to bring value to them. I don't want to just dump endless amounts of artwork, and then like that's an ongoing discussion with us. Like what is the right way to proceed, and so I think
It's
the
an
fact.
interesting question.
Yeah, I think just the fact that we had these collections that we knew we wanted to do, that we wanted to kind of like have out there on the blockchain, right? That once we reach that point, then I think it becomes a little more rare that we're putting up artwork, which is coming up soon after Friday. I think, other than the cards, we'll just put up one-off works of art as we are inspired to do so. But it would be less intense.
Well, you were talking about hanging a physical print, and how it was impossible to have a digital original displayed in a gallery. But thanks to modern technology, We can. So we have a gallery absolutely chock full of your digital originals in a digital gallery. The link's actually in the YouTube description. So for anyone playing at home, you can jump into your own version of the gallery and have a wander around, or you can join us as we kind of journey through I guess it's a bit of a chronological story of your involvement over the last few months in NFTs from kind of the beginning to the more recent ones. So should we start with the first work and have a look?
Sure, of course.
So over here on this wall, let's just have a quick look around the gallery because it does look very nice and very colorful. All these characters. So just a quick question, between yourself and Sun Mim, who does what? Are there characters that are yours and characters that are hers, or do you collaborate on both?
Yeah, most of these characters have existed for the last 20 years as toys of some kind, or consumer product based driven things of some kind. There's the little blue bear, Bossy Bear with the crown, that started as our Disney book series that was also a toy line.
Bossy Bear.
And is now with Ron Howard and Imagine for a great project we're working on for the near future.
Wow. I hope. Okay, we'll definitely hear more about that, hopefully.
Yeah, so pretty much everything that we've done, we've just kind of done it together, where I would have a hard time telling you who did. I could clearly tell you that the actual Ugly Dolls themselves were physically created by Sun Min. That's many stories in the press in the past got it very wrong by saying I sent her, she had to go back to Korea back in 2001 after we graduated, and I sent her these letters like, "Don't worry, we'll make this thing we wanted to build together come true." And I used to sign it with the little character at the bottom. So the stories would, perhaps to make it sound more romantic or whatever, they would say, "Oh, and then she turned that doodle into a doll." But that's like saying, "Oh, the Eames chair. Oh, he decided to make a chair. Oh, I have a chair now." It's not just a chair. So she looked at those drawings, but then cast them aside and created what I think is like the most incredible plush doll consumer product I personally have ever seen. Just her design choices, the fabric that she used, the way she sewed them together at the time and still I think are just beautiful. So once I saw the first one, I thought, this is what we have. This is the thing that we have to make more of, and it kind of went from there. As far as the artwork itself, it's very collaborative, and very based on a combination of real world experiences and my given level of anxiety at any moment, really. Facial expressions. So depending on what volume level that is at, you get those weird faces.
I've noticed the expressions. It's very funny when you post. Obviously, just for anyone watching at home who's not on Twitter and involved in all this, like there's an ongoing 24/7 conversation around crypto on Twitter, and it's by turns funny, dramatic, extreme, insightful, educational. It's kind of all these things. And I love, David, how like yesterday, for anyone playing at home, the markets dropped significantly and a lot of people were losing a lot of money. And yet there's just a level of humor involved in the conversation. And I loved how you were posting these characters kind of like staring at computer screens with real kind of faces and walking the dog, looking at your phone characters, and kind of, I love how that actually joins into the conversation and becomes part of the culture of the whole thing as well. It's fascinating. Yeah, really, really interesting how all this is just meshing together into this virtual world, real world mishmash. I guess you kind of dip in and out of each one now, and it's kind of this seamless, or getting more and more seamless as an integration, I guess, isn't it?
Well, yeah. As the stress levels intensify, the facial expressions become more relevant, and maybe people are opening the work out of their wallet and realizing it was not comforting them. Maybe I don't know, but that was an interesting last 24 hours for sure. And then for me personally, while that was happening, one fan who had been a long time fan for 20 years was expressing their disappointment in our involvement in this. Or I think it was because I made a comment about an article that said NFTs are no more. And I think I made which I probably I shouldn't comment on articles like that anymore, but I probably won't. But I think I said something like, it was a poorly written example of, well, that's like saying big band music is fading, but here comes rock and roll. Doesn't mean people are going to stop listening to music. And in my mind, I was thinking maybe there's like a transition away from what the press pays a lot of attention to, which is the big numbers and the big stories and the things that would, understandably, I understand why, that's what gets the average person interested in the first place. No one wants to read a story about how I've made a connection with all these hundreds of great, happy, like really great people. I don't know if there's a story there, right? Not at that level. But there's a story in 70 million on something they can call just a JPEG, right?
True.
So an interesting day for sure.
Well, this JPEG, this just the JPEG, I think must have a beautiful story behind it. Do you want to just talk us through this early piece that you released? And I just want to say thanks to, I think JC contributed this piece to the gallery today. This is in his collection.
Of course. Well, most of these, there's like a kind of like this city street scene that appears in our work over the last 20 years or so. If you've bought our books from Ugly Doll or any of our other books, there's always going to be sort of this one little scene in there somewhere. Some pieces were actual places, like I think we did one that was of Sawtell Boulevard, where the giant robot store is, and that's where Ugly Doll was first kind of born and sold for the first time. A lot of these street scenes were from in early days. I used to get, well, I still do, but I used to get pretty bad anxiety attacks where walking down the street, like on one hand, I love Tokyo more than anything, and I've spent like when we were living in Korea for years and years, for every month that we were in Korea, I was in Japan for a week. But I would just constantly get these anxiety attacks walking around there. But it was so enjoyable being there that I just didn't care. So it's these scenes sort of represent my plowing through that and probably not really treating it the right way. But when that moment, when it hits, a lot of it is my coping mechanisms and trying to focus on things other than what's happening, or focusing too much on the physical aspects of anxiety. So a lot of it was that. A lot of it comes from our love for New York as well, New York City. I grew up halfway in New York City and Los Angeles, and just all the interesting characters that you meet there, right? And just what it means not to be human, but to be human and get through most things. I try to say without really saying, so it's not so on the nose. I doubt anyone would read that from looking at that, but that's what's going on when we're putting that to digital paper.
That's amazing. That's such a intricate story that when you look at it now, you can kind of relate to what you're saying exactly. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was really interesting.
And then you're always going to find something like UFOs and the Mothman. There's a Mothman on the phone in his car. That comes from my wife and I. Like the first few days that we met, we found out that we were both crazy about not just UFOs and Area 51 sort of things, but specifically cryptozoology, which is funny that the word crypto in there. But like these specifically these creatures like Mothman and the Flatwoods Monster. They both fascinated us as kids. Apparently, we both found the same book in our school library when we were around the same age, which is bizarre because I found this huge like Crazy Things book or something. It was like one of those Time Life books. Um, in the States, we had these sendaways in the 80s called the Time Life books, and it was like many, you could get Time Life books from any subject matter. And there was like a kind of like psychics and psychic powers and crystal skulls and UFO. There was like that, the whole paranormal alternate view on things offering. And I found one of those books in our elementary school library, and it had these weird sketches of like the Mothman and the Flatwoods Monster, and it would have the stories of, these, what to these people were very real occurrences and their kind of take on whatever it is that happened. Both of those stories happened in West Virginia, not too far from each other. And I was just really, so for some reason, fascinated and gravitated towards those two specifically. And then when I met Sun Min in 1997 at Parsons in New York at art school, we started talking about these things, and she started telling me about this book that I said, well, was there a little guy in the corner like this, and did it have like this Time magazine logo on the front? Yeah. So I couldn't believe that none of my other friends knew what book I was talking about. They thought that book doesn't even exist. What are you saying? But she knew exactly about all this stuff. So
Wow,
we
that's a cool connection. That's a very cool connection to have with someone, and amazing that
yes,
you've
and then
turned that connection into this. Like that's even more amazing.
yes, yes, and then
So
we took a trip. We drove through like Roswell, New Mexico, and Area 51, like Groom Lake, Nevada. The parts of West Virginia, like where the Silver Bridge is in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the Mothman prophecy. There's been many Mothman stories from all over the world, but that I think was one of the more famous ones, thanks to the books and the film. So yes, we made ourselves even more ramped up by visiting all these places in the real world.
that's so cool. Did you document the trip as well? Did you like take lots of photos or video or
Yeah, I
anything
can
like
post.
that?
Yes, I'll post a really silly collage of us with like the Roswell Museum is a beautiful place. Just the all the little. I hope it's the same way. We haven't been there since we had children, but because we don't want. Well, actually, I would love to take them down there someday. If it's still, I'm sure it's still there. Yeah, it was a great trip. I'll post some photos on Twitter.
I do love the humor in
So
these. They're very fun.
the the one before this, the one with the kind of
This
retro
one.
video game
Yep.
references, yes, is thinking that you're alone in the things that you care about, and then finding that an entire ecosystem lives around that is an interesting feeling. Like I was very into like Japanese video game systems when they were new, but even as they became older, maybe even more so as they became older, really into retro video games or 16-bit era video game systems and the crazy systems they used to put out. How there'd be a Mega Drive, but then there was like a 32X component on top and a CD player underneath. And
I remember them.
uh,
Yes. Yeah.
in in Japan, they had this thing called the PC Engine, which was a tiny little system with a that worked with like a little HU card. But in
Yep.
America, because it was so tiny, they created this kind of fake shell and called it the TurboGrafx 16. And so it was like the PC Engine, and then this just big empty space to make the system look, I guess, cooler and to compete more with Nintendo and Sega. It was really just an empty thing.
But it
So
looked
those,
cool, I guess.
yeah. So that whole world, especially during those years, was always fascinating to me. And on an early trip to Japan, we were shown by our agent at the time, took us to Super Potato, which I hope it's still there. I haven't been, to Japan since the pandemic, and I hope they made it through. But Super Potato was this brilliant shop where you could get perfect condition or beat up condition old video game machines from that era. In fact, each floor was a different decade. So the one floor was like the 90s, and then the next floor was 2000 to 2010. I think I have it right anyway. And then the top floor was like all retro arcade. It was like a retro video game arcade. But just finding this whole ecosystem, and that there were so many people who also cared about like Game and Watch stuff from Nintendo, and how that in the little gold boxes, and just to find that there were like minds out there, and that it wasn't just you sitting in the corner crazy, right? Was That's what this is all about. And that's how it feels for me, having discovered the NFT world also. While I had no idea that it existed previously, I was always carrying that, like, I can't offer original artwork ever. I'll never be able to. And now I can. And so finding all these others who are able to do the same thing and who are very excited about it, which I think is still very early on. Like, I think NFTs are not over. I think we're still in America Online dial-up days, and the broadband of NFTs has yet to even show its face. I think it's gonna evolve.
100%. How can it be over when it's only just begun? I mean, every day there's a new outlet. Like, I found something the other day on a different platform called, I won't even try and pronounce it because it's ridiculous, but the acronym is HEN.
Yes.
And that's another NFT platform that's not on Ethereum, it's on a different blockchain. But some of the things getting released there, I found it was an NFT, it was an interactive album. So if you imagine there's like an artwork, and each track was represented by a little animated button, and you could click on the button and you could interact with the music, and it had like a little playlist designer within it so that you could actually shuffle the music tracks on the album depending on whether you wanted it fast or groovy or these kinds of different moods as well. And it was, I think, put together by, I hope I remember correctly, someone from Dead Can Dance. But 1x1 is the Twitter handle for that thing. So definitely go check that out. But and other people are releasing poetry online, written word combined with visual art, movies, 3D, virtual spaces, interactive, so that the artwork is different for everyone who interacts with it. Like, you can buy the artwork, but depending on where you click or what you drag or what it reacts to your impression, it's unique to you, which is really interesting, that the collector or the owner becomes actually an intrinsic part of the art and the experience of the art. I mean, it's opening up so many avenues that, there's no way it's just a JPEG, put it that way. I don't think that's a fair comparison in the slightest. Like it just says here, not a JPEG, not a JPEG RS.
Not a JPEG RS. Yes, it's not a JPEG art school, NFT art school. I thought for about 2 seconds what NFT art school would be like. It would be a very tiny building where there's no room to even go in. He would just tell you outside, not a JPEG. And then you turn around and you've graduated.
I love the protester over here, the flat Earth.
I refuse to learn. Also, flat Earth. Well, yeah, I think. Well, it's tricky. I think it's really fantastic that there are so many young people who are truly concerned about the environment, and I think that we're going to be in fantastic hands, because there's no way that you can be that passionate about something and have nothing happen for the better. So that's very good. And yes, there is energy expenditure. Yes, a lot of these articles sort of led them astray by sort of mixing and mashing things. And for some weird reason, focusing on the artist aspect of it versus but then sometimes they would use statistics from the entire ecosystem, like the entire global crypto ecosystem, to prove the point about a guy drawing over there in the corner, but then not bringing up the things that we really, really should be concerned about when it comes to energy expenditure. And if that was their real goal, I was confused as to why these articles kept leading these well-intentioned kids to become so angry at a very narrow aspect of what's actually going on. Our home in Korea, when I look out the window, we were really fortunate to have this we were the last apartment in this giant complex, so we just looked at the back, and it was like this big mountain. There were no other buildings to look at. Um, at but then I can't even see that anymore, right? The pollution has become so terrible. That pollution is not because a couple of years ago, Beeple started to offer NFTs and is selling them at Christie's. Not at all. But there is a real reason why it's like that. And I wish there was a way to funnel that energy and maybe get it turned from anger to action sort of way. I think that there must be an easy answer. I didn't find it today. I should probably just stick to drawing pictures. Uh, I don't know if I
Yeah,
convinced anyone. I tried to explain like, well, here's how this is actually going, and it was a weird combination of like, it's not a JPEG, it's not a JPEG, and here's how it that I have found that it seems to really be working, and then here's like Tezos, that's how you pronounce it, right? And here's these other sites that don't have any energy concern at all, and here's Matic, and here's the guys at Polygon coming up with a fix, and here's what OpenSea does with lazy minting, and nothing gets minted until it's actually sold.
mhm.
And if the article says NFTs aren't selling anymore, then we shouldn't have a problem because that would mean that nothing's minting. So which one is true? Which one's true, right? But
Yeah.
it's a very serious issue. Uh, but I think funneling that anger towards artists, why when Instagram scrolling causes its own energy expenditure. Yeah, it's tricky. So not
It's a
JPEGs
very
or
tricky
less
one.
encapsulates that whole argument, right? And knowing that I can never go out there and convince people, as I proved to myself today. There's a lot of people who have a point of view that they're going to have that point of view until they don't, and their point of view changing is not going to come from me at all. So JPEGs are us. There it is.
There it is. Very nice. I think just one thing I would like to add for anyone watching who has heard about the environmental concerns and things like that. I spent a couple of years a while back creating a documentary along with some other people in Australia, some very talented people, about the demise of the Great Barrier Reef, which is a tragedy. It's essentially something that we stand to potentially lose within our lifetime. And it is due to global warming and warming of the oceans and agricultural runoff and a variety of reasons. And I guess that whole process just showed me that there is an incredible amount of waste generated through so much of our activity on this planet. And not just waste that then goes into damaging the environment, but then people who are supposed to be in charge of fixing it, like your elected officials and people in charge of organizations, there's a lot of waste there as well. This documentary really looked at the political side of things and just the complete inaction due to the power of lobby groups, for instance, in the mining sector or the financial sector, who don't, get the limelight that something like NFT artists are getting at the moment as far as damaging the environment, even though there would be multitudes of, exponentially worse at doing it. So the last year for me in blockchain and looking at the creative industries in blockchain, I feel like there's actually an incredible saving of resources. It is one of the most efficient, or one of the most emergingly efficient systems I've ever seen in my life. Like, it is, like you said, you create a piece of art digitally now. So there's no physical supplies that need to go into that other than your computer and your
That's right.
electricity. Beyond that, there's no waste of paints that dried out over time, or there's paper that got torn or smudged or things like that. Then there's no transport costs involved. There's no, when someone buys your artwork, having to ship it halfway across the world. Like you said, with some of these platforms, lazy minting means that energy consumption doesn't even happen until someone actually buys the thing. At which point,
Correct.
you've literally created something, you've posted it, someone buys it. That to me is just incredibly efficient. And the fact that you can sell 100 of these things that way and not have to ship 100 around the world, when we start looking at that as a scale, I don't know, to me, it's actually something that we should be excited about, as far as its lack of environmental impact and the fact that there are some very, very smart people working on improving that even more so, like drastically improving the effect. So we'll see
Yes.
where it all goes, but I just wanted
Yes.
to say that for anyone watching at home for a different perspective, and don't
Of
believe
course.
everything you read in the newspaper.
Well, any technology in its first iteration is probably going to be at its worst, and what's coming
Exactly.
literally around, or what's here actually, right, being activated today. New marketplaces based entirely on Matic that just take care of that. So now you're just left with, you don't like people selling JPEGs. Then that's a different argument. And I think the argument for that is that's not what these are. These are originals of my work, and maybe that's a more gentle discussion to have. Or I shouldn't even. I shouldn't. I'll just do the pictures. I've learned not on Twitter. Um, Not the place to do it. But for me, it's a big deal, really, to be able to offer originals. Just means a tremendous amount. And if there's even one or two people out there who understand it that way, that's a real privilege. It's just me internally knowing that that's what this is. That I'm fine with. If
Hmm.
if there's only four people or three people who will make that mental leap with me, then that's a blessing. But now that I know that that's what it is that I'm able to make, it's just solved this huge issue, and kind of empty hole that has just been filled, and
Hmm.
uh, it's that just that I'm so grateful for that, even for this existing, and then all the amazing people that I've connected with, thanks to it, is just phenomenal. It's been a phenomenal ride, really.
Yes, and I'm just glad to kind of be one of those people you've connected with, and yeah, it fills me with a lot of joy to even just be here doing this with you today. It's a real thrill, actually. So yeah, let's move on to Bossy Bear. So where did Bossy Bear come from?
Bossy Bear was a children's books, two children's books that we did with Disney Publishing, maybe 20 years ago, and the books did okay. It was they were released in the States all over the place. They were released in Japan and in South Korea, and in Mexico, and the books did great. But at the time when the books came out, that was when the whole designer toy thing was sort of booming and at its peak, where there were artists expressing themselves through toys, right? Like limited edition, like how we're expressing ourselves through NFTs. Back then, designer toys was the big movement. It's actually even bigger now. Like in Japan and Korea and China, it's the biggest thing I've ever seen. It's incredible. It's beyond belief, and I'm so sad that I can't physically be there, not yet, and join in on what our pals are up to. But Bossy Bear was a book series, but then we made all of the characters from the books as little figures. I don't have one with me, and those things just took off like crazy. We were very surprised. For us, it was all about the book, and then the toys were like a fun extra that went into museum shops. So we didn't really sell them in toy stores, like in mass market big box stores. They were always in like the gift shop at the MoMA in New York, or at a museum store gift shop, or maybe at a design furniture store. And those they disappeared as soon as we would put them on the shelves. So it kind of more lived on through a toy line over the last 20 years or so. And then we started to develop it as an animated property a few years ago, and started working with Imagine. Um, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer decided to get into the kids and family business, and so they opened up Imagine Kids and Family. I think it was almost exactly 3 years ago now, and yeah, we're working away at it on Bossy Bear with them. So we'll see how that goes.
Fantastic. Is that going to be a TV series, an animated series, or a movie, or what's the
Uh,
plan?
uh, yeah, well, hopefully both, but I think the episodic versions will come out, initially in the beginning. Sure.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
I wish I could say more.
So what's it like? I mean, it's interesting that someone like yourself and some men have had this career in producing toys, movies, TV shows, books, artwork, exhibitions, characters, all these things, and bringing this universe across with you into this digital world is incredible. What's it like in the physical world? What's the last 20 years for you been like as a creative and progressing through that world, from this initial idea that you've had in art school to now, going into movies, going into TV shows? It sounds like it's a dream for a lot of people to be able to do that kind of thing. How have you found it?
Yeah. Yeah, we were very fortunate to have a toe in all of these different pools. Very early on, um, we started working with NHK, which is the kind of government broadcaster in Japan. It's like NHK is sort of like the government channel, and they have a robust preschool morning program that they run, for like kids shows. Like I don't know if you've seen the character Domu-kun. He's like a
Yes.
brown
Little
character.
brown angry dude, yeah.
One of the early memes from like 20 years ago with the kittens, and he's like chasing a kitten or something, and that became. But the NHK is it's just the government channel, the government run channel in Japan, and we worked with NHK and Sony very early on to create a animated TV show called Little Boney, and we've made Little Boney into an NFT a couple times, I believe, and it was like a way to get preschool kids up to move around in the morning and kind of stretch their limbs. So he's like a little skeleton guy that we call it zooming his limbs, that his limbs can stretch and magnify and do all kinds of move around stuff. So that was on every weekday morning for a while. And of course, had all the stuff that comes with it, the tchotchkes, all the toys and the everything you can imagine, the little lunch boxes and things. So we spent a lot of time in Japan right after school because of that project. And then just being there kind of inspired us to dive deeper into the character world. And we saw ourselves as storytellers, but telling story through product, if that makes sense. That we weren't just making things based on a show, but that the toys were the storytelling vehicle. So because we were in Japan, we started meeting with other creatives, and they were introducing us to other people from other companies, and we produced a lot of toys and products there, and a lot of products and toys in South Korea, where my wife is from, and where we've lived for back and forth for forever since over the last 20 years or so. And then through Ugly Doll, just the connection with fans that we've made. They were never really available at the big shops like Walmart or whatever. Like the big shops in South Korea are E-Mart or Lotte Mart. I don't know if you have what the mass market version of that would be over where you are. But
do you mean like those big floor, just clothes, toys, everything kind of thing? We've got
sure.
Kmart, Big W, those kinds of things.
Sure. Yes, exactly. So we stayed away from that world quite purposefully and more focused on trying to place products into specialty retailers that really resonated with us and felt like a place where you could kind of tell a story through products, if that was possible. And New York was great. New York City was really rich with lots of really special, one-of-a-kind shops. And that was a real joy to walk up and down the city and get to know all the owners and really work on placing these things in the right, so that they would be found in the right places with the right context. So the first 20 years were not just making lots of things, but kind of telling stories through books and toys and tin toys and like our lunchbox wasn't just a tin lunchbox, right? If you follow along, it tells this ridiculous. It's like a commentary on growing up with a metal lunchbox in school as a kid. and all the ridiculous things that might happen to you during lunchtime, etc. So
I love
yeah,
that idea of
that was,
getting it into the right hands. That's a really interesting idea when you create something and wanting to put that in the hands of people who will appreciate, and going to that length of not, like you said, just put it out there for the mass market, but really targeting. In fact, it's really interesting in the comments. We've got something from 333. Thanks for watching. Just saying, about Bossy Bear, I think. That's insane that you say that. I thought I recognized the style, and as a kid, I got one in specifically a museum gift shop in Florida. So there
oh
you go.
wow,
There's someone watching who actually got a Bossy Bear as a kid.
that's pretty great. That's one unexpected aspect of the NFT phenomenon and our involvement in it is, when we had fans for over the last 20 years, they were adults, or they would bring their kids, but it was mostly us interfacing with adults. And now we're interfacing with uh, young adult, like 20 somethings who were kids when we were doing what we were doing 20 years ago, right? That these kids grew up with our work in one form or another, and now we're kind of rediscovering them and connecting with them as young adults. It's really was unexpected, but a fascinating aspect of this for us. That kind of came out of nowhere, because we don't get out much. Like we don't. When we're in Korea, I'm either working at home or walking around Seoul, or when we're in Japan, I'm usually just working still, or walking around. It's very busy, and I never really had any interaction with those who actually interfaced with what it is that we were making. And because of just I'm so bad at social media, there was never that connection. It was very rare that a young person said, "Oh my gosh, I grew up with these," right? So I thought, well, I guess it's because no one grew up with these. There's no, I don't know who was buying those books, but that maybe not many. I know how well they did, but maybe it was one guy just buying all of them. Who knows? But then all of a sudden, we're getting messages and connecting with people who grew up with our stuff. So it's been interesting.
Interesting. So if we move along here, we've got these two cards, which were from, I think, the Elf Hunt series, which I think was that the first one you released?
These were the first cards that we did, and yeah, those were that guy, yeah, Battle Master. That guy had the most views. I don't know how the view counter on OpenSea works, because sometimes I'm pretty sure that some don't get as many views, and then they'll be very high. But I guess he had the highest views, and then I think that one resold for. I think that was our first resell. The first time when I realized, oh, these things can you can bring value to people several times over in different ways. Like on one
Mm.
hand, the person who appreciates this as for what it is, and then there's someone else who is a collector, but who gravitates towards being able to look at it as an investment, or to be able to turn it around to someone else, or maybe someone didn't want to really turn it around but received an offer on it. Yeah, like the idea that you could receive offers on the works that are in your digital wallet, your metaverse wallet, or whatever the name is that we're settling on, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that when I first realized that you can get offers on things that you bought. It's just fascinating. So I
And just
believe
for
that was one.
context, oh, sorry, go. You go. Sorry.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
I was
I
just going to
just
say,
I,
just for you go, David. You go.
no, only that aspect of NFT art just blew my mind. That there's a life after it goes and changes hands. It's interesting.
It, yeah, for me, Ethereum, especially as a blockchain, is kind of the final form of capitalism, right? Like everything can be tokenized, everything will be tokenized. The market drives everything, up or down. And so, just for context, for anyone watching, this card, I believe you originally sold this series at 0.005 ETH. Is that correct?
Yes.
Which was the
Yeah. I
equivalent of
don't
like
remember.
$10. I think the transaction cost
Yes,
was actually like 5 times more to buy it than the card
that's right.
itself. And
I
then
think
for
so.
the resale value, this sold for 1 ETH, which at the time I think was around $2,500 or something. So we've gone from $10 to a resale value of $2,500 in a matter of a fortnight.
Yeah,
But someone
incredible.
sees the value in that, and I think this is actually in the 4156 collection, which for anyone watching who doesn't know, 4156 is a fairly big account on Twitter who is a very active collector of all of this NFT art and things that are really pushing the envelope, and has been quite vocal actually about your collection and your work on the blockchain, and especially some of your ideas around copyright, which I'd like to really get into as well, if you
Yes,
want
he's
to,
been our
about.
Obi-Wan Kenobi of sorts.
In a way, yes, yeah, absolutely. And here's another one from his collection as well. So both of these I think resold for 1 ETH. Um, but I think the other thing that's important to mention is there is the resale value, but a lot of the other things that have happened in your collection, and again with 4156 and even myself and a few others, we've got these cards and have felt, I think, quite privileged to be there early on when no one, or not no one, but not many people knew about what you were doing in the NFT
Sure.
space.
Yeah.
And we were able to collect a fair amount at a very, very low price point. And I noticed as they were going quicker, people kind of leaving comments in your thread like, oh, damn, I missed out on that one, or oh, I wasn't quick enough, and things
Yes.
like that. And, I've been able to get in touch with someone and just give them a card, because for me it's a $10 purchase, and perhaps for them it means that they can actually get into your world a bit more. And there's been competitions that have been held giving away your cards, where asking people for, what was it, like incentives to release some of the characters in the real world as different kind of objects, and someone was going to fund some of the seed capital to do that and gift them the
Yes.
copyright.
Brilliant.
Just talk me through
Really.
some of that, because it's really interesting how a creator such as yourself can essentially release the IP almost, or release the copyright, not necessarily the IP,
Sure.
but talk us through some of that and how it works. And I'll just
Oh
move over
yeah.
to
Well,
the UMA characters, because that's who we're talking about at this point, I think.
we've talked
You have
about that
UMA.
for, I think, forever, and we've talked about how, on one hand, we had a next door neighbor who, I don't want to say who it is, but who created a really well known comic book character, and who, if this person were to hear that we were taking this position, this person would take an airplane and come here and tell me this is the no. And here, don't do that. And I 100% think that that person should hold on to those rights, and that the rights that they're holding on to are protecting him, and you gotta protect yourself for sure. So our position on doing and our doing this was not a commentary on what others should do at all. It was more us thinking about what we saw or felt might happen way further down the road in the future. That perhaps, well, also, rights have not always protected us, not at all. They've been incredibly expensive. It's like crushingly expensive to both to protect and just to have the proper protection. When you're creating an intense amount of characters, but that you're not going to Walmart with them, but you're only going to small stores and kind of purposefully limiting the revenue, but at the same time having to spend the same amount on protecting yourself as if you were going to Walmart and generating millions of dollars. It adds up, and rightfully so. And in general, it's an important step that one should take. And I'm trying to. I even almost have to close my eyes so I can mentally work through what our thinking was. But it has worked against us many times, where maybe we couldn't afford a fancy enough lawyer at the time, and now the language says a certain thing, and now it's more like a gotcha situation where we're now trapped within because of the rights. And those are all specific situations, and they were on us. It was my inexperience and the reality of whatever situation we were in at the time. So we're not really making commentary on what others should do, what we think others should do, but that we very much wanted to do. That we wanted to just create the artwork, and then finding out that we could offer original digital work. That inspired us to. We just want to offer you originals, and for us, there's a value in the original and owning that original. But that we also wanted to then release it so that we could bring an extra layer of value to everyone else in this outer ring close to us who is interested in what we're doing. That what else can we do to bring value to those who are interested in what we're doing, who will give us even 2 seconds of their time to even look at what it is that we're up to? Was, the idea that someone would be interested enough to spend a few seconds to look at what you're up to. We want to bring them as much joy and value as possible. And we thought this might be one way to do that. And it kind of releases us in many ways from having to worry about any of that. We couldn't do it with Bossy Bear or Ugly Doll or like Little Bone, like the projects that we had in media or that we're currently working on. Too many moving parts, too many people where their livelihood depends on those rights being protected, and we're not thinking of touching that. But pretty much most of the upcoming projects are, to us, going to be just completely, nobody owns it.
Right? That's such a fascinating concept. That is such a fascinating concept. Like, so for anyone who doesn't know, if you buy one of these UMA characters, so you have that artwork, but you also get a Photoshop file with, I think, like 20 different UMAs in different poses doing different things that David and Sun Min are allowing you to do whatever you want with. I mean, that is incredible. Again, it's like I was saying earlier about that interactive artwork where you click on something and you're now part of the art. But I mean, this takes it to a whole nother level where, well, I could make a clothing line. You could create toys of your own. You can make, I think someone's out there doing phone stickers. Someone else is, what's the project that 4156 helped to fund through his competition of someone in Mexico creating little UMA ceramic dolls? Like, do you want to talk about what's happening there? And this is happening so quickly. I've
seen one photo that I think I'm not supposed to say until it's ready to up to a certain point. But just absolutely incredible. We can't wait. And that's exactly what we were hoping to see, right? That would happen. On one hand, we worried because releasing this, we didn't want to making things is very expensive, and it can lead to like serious financial loss. Which we have endured many times. Like you think, I want to make a plush doll. We're making, even now, 20 years later, with our experience, we wanted to make these 600 plush dolls, which we have for a project that they're not products that we're going to sell. Even it's just we need a 600 of something to take a picture. The funny, we just need 600 of this same doll for our own purposes. So we had them made, and they're brought over. And now they got flagged by customs, and it's going to cost, because we didn't do safety testing or we didn't put one little funny number in the corner of the pack. Now we could be on the hook for an enormous amount of money, And so you have to be very careful when you do create products. But all that said, yes, you can make anything you want with these. And so far the idea is really phenomenal.
It is interesting. Are you amazed at the speed at which this happens? So you release an NFT, it has some artwork, someone picks up on it who's got a fair amount of followers on Twitter and creates a competition. People answer within a few days. Someone's won. They've been transferred some money and some artwork, and a few days later they're now in production on a product. I mean, in the space of a fortnight, from artwork release to physical product prototype is phenomenal. I'm always mind blown at the speed of this space, and it's exciting. And sometimes you come back to the real world and you're like, oh, whoa, this is slow. This is really slow. Can't we all just be crypto people? But no, that's probably getting a bit too much.
But it was really, really fun. I mean, that very generous offer to fund projects, and just the speed at which they were ready with this phenomenal work, and these ideas were just incredible. So yeah, it's really fun to see. I mean, that's part of what we were hoping we would see. We were hoping that the idea of doing that might just inspire someone to start to want to do something and go, oh, well, wait a minute, why am I using theirs? I have my own characters, I have my own ideas, like kind of like, oh, I bet I could make this. I could make, oh, wait a minute, I can just make that without that. Like anything that would inspire young people to head towards doing something with either ours or their own, or blend them. It doesn't really matter. It's all just open for anyone to do anything with.
Yeah, amazing. One of the releases, because you've released several series, there's been the Elf Hunt cards, there's been the Cryptos, there's been the Umas, there's been the Bossy Bears, Noopas coming out soon. But one of the ones that kind of came out of nowhere and is just really interesting to me, because a lot of people have started using this, including myself, as their profile picture on Twitter, is the 51 Club, or whatever we're calling it. And this is number 51 right here, which is yours and Sun Min's. What is the 51? And does it relate to Area 51 in any way at all? Is 51 like a lucky number for you?
Yeah, well, Area 51, our very first conversation about Area 51 in 1997 was, first it was, well, does that mean it's like the 51st state in the United States? Like, is it some secret extra state that they have, or is it that? There was this is pre-high-speed internet, so a lot of silly discussions that you couldn't just go look up unless you wanted to wait for one picture to load for like 10 minutes. And just for us, the 51 thing felt more like Outcasts. In a way, at some point, it felt more like, well, the Mothman and the Flatwoods guys, and that the UFO section at the bookstore, which actually got pretty big now. It's not so much the Outcast area anymore. Now it's a pretty fun area. But that, I remember as a kid going to a chain of bookstores in Los Angeles called Crown Books, and there was like that weird crystal balls and crystal skulls and UFOs and ghosts area that I always gravitated towards, but was always sort of like the outcast area. So for us, I felt like the 51 represented those who are early to the crypto art world, that I felt like we were not necessarily outcasts, but a sort of interesting new category that just when others hear about it, maybe they make certain jump decisions about it, or they hear a catchphrase in the mass media, and then they've decided that, well, that's what it is. It's a pyramid scheme, or just something that to me reminded me of like, we are Mothman now. We are the Flatwoods Monsters in a way, right? That they don't believe in us. We don't actually exist the way, like when they hear stories about us, first of all, they get it wrong, or they're very sure that it's actually this. That reminds me a lot of cryptozoology stories, right, from that we used to hear in the 90s. So when I say we are the 51, it's like we are those who others are getting the story wrong about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute perfect sense. I really, really like that. And it actually makes me even happier to be a proud member of the 51. So thank you for releasing that. It's exactly, thank you. It's exactly how it is. I'll just take a little moment to indulge the golden wall here. And the golden 51 is my one up in the top right corner, which I'm very happy to own.
Right. Yes. Yeah, they were
What
also
are
their handle pictures also.
they're great handle pictures. I think that's something to bear in mind, especially since CryptoPunks, you can't discount displaying your NFT as a Twitter profile pic. It actually, especially in the case of something like Punks or the Bored Ape Yacht Club or all these kind of different projects that are very profile picture friendly, it really kind of indicates it's a meme essentially, right? It communicates something
Sure.
about who you are, what you understand, the time you've been involved, your financial level of commitment to the whole thing. Like, it's really interesting how a small picture, and in the case of Punks, like pixels, someone can post the profile picture of their punk and it's worth over $1 million. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
but for me, it was never like showing the financial status. Like I like the way you said it was the level of commitment, right?
Mm.
That it felt like more like that to me. I may have it wrong, but when I
No.
see a crypto punk in the profile, it's like how deep you've gone into down the rabbit hole, your level of understanding, and it has
Yeah.
these layers to it that are different than, say, if I'm interpreting, someone rolling down the street in a fancy car. Uh, if someone's rolling down the street in a fancy car, I would hope that internally I would say someday instead of like I'm jealous of you, bad word thing. But so
Mm.
I'm trying to tell myself to be like, oh yeah, someday. But when I see right either it's either an indication that this person was in early and just knew what was going on before any of us, or that they are just deeply committed to it and they understand what it means, or it means something to them so very deeply that they actually have one. And that when you have it in your Twitter handle, you can they have one. That's the bizarre thing, is that the argument of, well, I could just take a screen grab of that and put it in. Like, you could, but isn't it funny? Like, I've not found. And after saying this, if there's any large number of people listening, they're going to go, well, I can. But in general, they really do. Those are theirs, right? It seems like.
Because it's verifiable, I guess. I mean, some people do create new accounts and they post a punk to try and get followers, but very quickly they're weeded out because it's
Well,
again, it's verifiable, it's on chain, you
right.
can see which wallet owns what, and yeah, there's a certain status that comes with that. It's funny, like last year when I first got involved in this whole world, and people were kind of talking about punks, but not in the way they are now, which is, I mean, I don't know if you've seen what's happening there with the comic that's coming out. They're basically creating a whole new crypto native Marvel universe from these pixelated characters, and it's so brilliantly executed. I can't wait to see where this goes. But last year I was looking at punks and didn't quite get it, and I was still learning about Ethereum, and part of me was like, I don't deserve to own one of these yet. I potentially could buy one because they were a hell of a lot cheaper last year, but
That's
I
funny.
didn't want to put that in my profile picture and pretend that I'd been around for longer than I had been, because I think, again, everything's verifiable on chain. And while now you can just go out and buy one, and lots of people are, I don't know, there was just something that didn't sit well. So when I found the 51, I was like, oh, that speaks to me. Like, I can be one of them,
Yeah, well, yeah,
and
we
and,
are.
and proudly so,
Yeah, very kind.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's like a black belt. You can buy. You can go to a martial arts supply place and buy a black belt, but something just feels wrong, and that's how it feels to just put old punk in your bio picture. It's like, I have to, your skill level is also verifiable when it comes to a black belt, so you'll know.
Very true. I actually got a
So,
black belt last year, and
oh,
it's a good
congratulations!
feeling, David. It's a very, very good feeling. It's a lot of time, effort that pays off, and it's just that thing that you put on each time and go, yeah, okay, I did earn that, and it feels good. So anyway,
Excellent.
yeah.
That is an amazing accomplishment, actually. Wonderful.
Thank you. What is the golden cryptos all about? Is there any special? Are they super rare? Is there any kind of thing that you had in mind with the golden cryptos?
The rotating coins are the least rare thing we've ever done because we repeated 4 of them. So that was sort of the point. Was that a lot of the early artwork that we interfaced with, and it wasn't bad or anything, but I noticed that it was very like on the nose sort of thing, like spinning coins and
Mm.
cryptocurrency call out, like in the work, which I thought was interesting. A lot of things were always rotating all the time. A lot of
Yep.
3D models rotating with like a neon thing around it, and not that any of that was bad, but it just in the early days it felt like there was a certain futuristic look to it, and then some crossover of cryptocurrency. I mean, we have tons, right? We have the Not a JPEGs RS art school, NFT art school in there, right? So I think it was a combination of acknowledging those, and then from our toy days, there were, for some reason, Todd McFarlane would release these beautiful figures from a toy line he had in the 90s called Spawn. Uh, that sort of then changed the industry. Before Todd McFarlane came in, all the toys in the 90s were these brightly colored, poorly articulated, very cartoony, friendly, happy things. Even like serious action, like the Terminator action figures from 1993, are the happiest, smoothest little things you've ever seen. And they're amazing. They're bright colors and they're just so fun. And then all of a sudden, Todd McFarlane comes along. But then for some reason, he would do a second run of those toys just in all gold, which I never really understood that.
Ah.
Why? Like, was that like more like, well, these are like trophies that I like, they're awards or something? So I didn't understand that, but my lack of understanding drove me to want to offer gold versions of our NFTs. No one would ever catch that reference, but or now that they've heard it, even like it very much. But we just had to do it that way.
Ooh, I just walked through the wall in the gallery somehow. We're back. We're back.
Well, that's the great thing about NFTs is you can walk through the wall and do anything you want.
I do love the gold. And I mean, it's just, I mean, humanity has an obsession with gold, right? Someone once asked me many years ago, silver or gold? And you're like, empires didn't fall over silver, as far as I'm aware. Like
Right.
empires fell over gold. So let's go for gold. It has a much better story. Just really quickly, I just want to give a shout out to some more people watching. We have Scomra, Richard Dorsey, 333 watching. Who else? Hilda. Cool. Nice. Thanks for joining.
Yes.
Also, just want to give a shout out to everyone who has been collecting David and Sunmin's work and has contributed some pieces to the gallery. So I jumped into the Discord earlier and asked if anyone wanted to put some pieces up, and people like Nonprofit, Scomra, Prize Pool. I think a piece of JC's is in here, and apologies to anyone else who I might have missed out. But thank you all very much for
Thank you
contributing
for
part of your
contributing,
collections
really.
into the room. Even though I could just right click and save, it feels nice to ask the owner, right?
Yes, I was thinking about that. Like you actually reached out for them to contribute, and that I think that's an important aspect and step of this whole thing. It's again a lesson from the Not a JPEG art school of NFTs.
Look, to me, this is all about community. It really is. This NFT space will live and die by the people behind it, from both the artists, the collectors, the software developers, the platform moderators, curators, and anyone else who's coming into the space. It really is where we've all got to, I think if everything on chain is verifiable and open, and we've got to be like that with each other in a certain way as well. So that's just how I see it.
Absolutely.
Now, probably this would be your most famous creation, I guess, is the Ugly Dolls, or one of the most kind of widespread. So
Sure.
This is the final Ugly Doll artwork, you said, as NFTs. Is that the
Yes.
final Ugly
So
Doll
these are
artwork full stop? Or?
Yes, we wanted to do kind of like this collection of 100 Ugly Doll NFTs, and then that would be it for all of history. And if NFTs became something larger in the future, we wanted to, which I think they will. I think that, and as it evolves, for anyone out there who would care, we wanted to get these done early enough so that it would be part of the. It's hard to explain, but that they'd be part of the early days of the early story, right? That it wouldn't just be this ongoing thing where maybe someday NFTs transforms into like collectible action figures. Like, is this how kids will collect things? Like, my 8-year-old son, he doesn't really go for toys other than Legos. He doesn't. Like, I think I have more action figures than he does. I have like 7 or 8 Star Wars guys, and he doesn't. He asks me, "Are those oily? They look old, those because these are old from the '80s." Like, I don't want to touch some outgassing toys from the '80s. But I just wanted to, Sunman and I wanted to make these set of 100 that any Ugly Doll fans could kind of like look back in the halls of NFT history and find that they'd always be there, right? And so I think that's one reason why I think we released so many different series, even though we actually wanted to keep each series small in number. We wanted to create enough Ugly Doll NFTs so at least the existing fan base or the fan base that grew up with it and who is now growing into this NFT space could find and sort of trade and collect or kind of seek out if they wanted to do so.
How did it feel releasing? I read you a tweet that Sun Min was the one who pushed the sale button on the final Ugly Doll. How was that feeling of putting an end to that collection and putting it out there for you and for Sun Min?
Yeah. Well, we were really happy that we like when we realized what this was, we felt this urgency to kind of document the properties that we lived with for 20 years and wanted them to become real by doing this. So I would tell my the Ugly Doll fans on the Facebook page and in the special Ugly Doll group, like this is probably for me probably the most important and or significant artwork we've ever made, and I've done my best to try to help others make that sort of mental leap to understand why that would be, why would it be like that, and it felt like as we're getting older. Actually, Sunman doesn't really age the same way I do, but as I'm getting older, and I kind of sense my ability to put something down like this, luckily you wouldn't know if I got that completely wrong or not, but my ability to do this is, the days ahead are shorter than behind, and so I kind of felt like we have to at least get this much of what we've been living through up onto this in this way, right? To have them exist in this way was really important to us. It's really hard to explain, but there was a real urgency. Like these have to make it to the as non-fungible tokens, on the blockchain before that while we're still healthy and able,
That's so interesting. I mean, I just imagine future civilizations or whatever it is and unearthing, or perhaps not even unearthing, perhaps like you say, if blockchain is kind of the foreseeable future, this could be hundreds of years into the future of this artwork still living on chain and your work preserved. And isn't it interesting? I think you mentioned to me in an earlier chat that physical things fade, physical things break, they get lost, they get damaged, things like that, torn, yes, ripped, whatever. Sure. This, as an original artwork, I think this is really an interesting concept, that this is your original and it will always look like your original. And
right.
When I sell or anyone else sells to someone else and they collect it, nothing changes about the actual physical properties of that artwork. It's still as vibrant as the day it was made.
Yeah, I think it's the only thing that we've ever produced where that's true. Because even you could say, well, you post stuff on Instagram and that's there forever. I don't know. I don't know if that's there forever. I think stuff we post on Instagram is as forever as the things I put on my GeoCities website in the 90s, or as forever as my boot up discs from from my first computer. So I think that's as forever as those get. Whereas I feel like these have the greatest maybe potentially these have the greatest shot at living the longest out of anything that we've made. Like a lot of things that we've made in plastic. Here's an action figure that we made 18 years ago or so, and already the arms are a different color than the body. Is just what happens when different plastics start to outgas.
And I might just put you full screen, David. Can you hold that?
Sorry. So that this is one of a multitude of action figures that we've produced over the years, and you won't be able to see that because my Max camera is not not the best. But that arm color used to perfectly match the body. I spent months trying to get it to match, and we did a good job of it. But just the nature of plastics, it's outgassing, right? It's slowly disappearing into the air, and it's becoming oily and a little sticky. And it's probably not very healthy for me to be even holding this, really. 20-year-old toys are tricky. Like a lot of action figure collectors, try opening one of your action figures. It's not a pleasant experience. It's kind of gross.
Yeah. All those He-Man toys.
Or transporting paintings. I mean, yeah, you have to be careful. You have to use bubble wrap, and you have to put a lot of care into transporting artwork. Of course, you should. We don't have to worry about any of that. The transport is, like what you see here. That's the fact that you can have meals like this in a virtual gallery is just incredible.
And for anyone watching, and you've got the link in YouTube to go to the gallery yourself, and when you click on an artwork, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a link that will take you directly to the page where, if it's for sale, you could buy it or put a bid on it, or the whole marketplace is open from one click as well. So you don't even have to get in your car and travel or take a plane ride or anything. Like, you just click a link and it'll take you to the page, and that's the marketplace right there. Super interesting. So talk me through Spider Boom. These are cute. These came out yesterday only, and they've all sold out.
Yeah, that Sunman felt an urgency to kind of put on the blockchain the same way we felt the urgency for Ugly Doll. It was just a character of hers that she's been living with for most of her life. The first week that we met, she posted up these paintings of Spider Boom. It was like a spider that eats a fruit. So if it eats an apple, it'll give birth to a baby spider with an apple on his head, and then Spider Boom then uses the baby spider to create ingredients to make more apple-related food. I always thought it was a little bizarre, but that's her. That's kind of like her signature character. We've made tons of Spider Boom toys over the years, and she's sold many, like physical paintings in galleries over the years, and many have collected her work on Spider Boom. She did a Spider Boom Nike through Kid Robot 20 years ago. So if you get the Kid Robot Nike shoe, there's a Spider Boom inside when you look inside the shoe. She's made all kinds of cool tchotchkes in Hong Kong and in Japan and Korea based on Spider Boom. So she was very determined to put out at least the main versions of that universe. She's working on an actual children's book about Spider Boom that she was planning to either self-publish or go through one of our publishers. And now we're wondering if maybe we should release, or if we can release the book as an NFT. If there's a way to do it properly, then maybe that's we'll see how it goes.
Interesting.
That's where Spider Boom comes from. And you were talking about, the logistics of moving paintings around. Just the world that we came from, making products and, from factories to the talk about energy expenditure, like what it takes to move things around the world to get them into somebody's hands is. We're very blessed that we've been able to operate in that world for the last 20 years, but now I have come to think that while what we did was always very limited in number and very like non-mass market boutique, um, shipping a couple hundred of something to mom and pop toy shops or to museum stores, I don't think had too much of a footprint, but we became very educated in what is really involved in making things and getting those things into our hands. And that's another aspect of NFTs that are fascinating to me is like the idea that young people, like my son loves Lego and doesn't care much for other toys. But within Lego, he fell in love with a series that I found that actually a friend of mine made up called Lego Hidden Side. So you would build a Lego set, but then you would use your iPad to kind of scan the Lego set, and it would put an augmented reality universe around the Lego set. And it was a ghost hunter theme. It was kind of like Ghostbusters ish theme. So you would build this haunted house, take a picture of it with your iPad, and then you could move around it, and the environment would be all around it, and there would be ghosts flying around it, and you would catch them by tapping on them or some way of catching them. And after you caught the ghosts, you would collect them almost like Pokemon cards on your iPad. And he was more into the collecting of the ghosts aspect on the iPad. They were like his virtual action figure collection, right? And I realized this one aspect of NFTs, I think, maybe will be young people maybe not so much collect like a weird blend of like collecting Pokemon cards, but also kind of siphoning the whatever you get out of collecting action figures at that age. When you're 4 or 5, there's more of a play pattern, and there's actual there's a reason, like the play pattern reason for play, right? I'm kind of like 25% of Hasbro's business in toys is to adults, like action figure collectors. That's a huge portion of their business. It would be very interesting if that could be taken out of the physical world, where imagine being able to knock off 25% of the physical making of things from the factory to the giant boats and shipping that bring everything here to the waste that goes on when those things get thrown away or resold too many times. Like there's this with one action figure. There's a multi-decade history to it, right? And it moves around like crazy. Like that time, several millions. What if that became something, like an NFT where you're collecting things virtually, right? I don't know if that will really truly happen or not. I know that there's some marketplaces that kind of offer virtual sculptures and things of Batman and maybe I don't know if they have Marvel ones yet. I don't remember the name of I think VEVE, and they sell virtual action figures, and they have a virtual DeLorean from Back to the Future, which is pretty cool.
Okay. I haven't seen that, but that sounds interesting.
If you could, not only for collecting art, but for many aspects of collecting or possessions, or I wonder if there's going to be a transition where, especially if it's true that Apple's got some glasses in the works or something, right? Where you've now had this new way to sort of share and show off the things that you resonate with, right? A lot of collecting is like, well, this is kind of me. Like I collect these because these are me, and I identify with these things, and I enjoy these things, and I think that a part of me is like these are all a part of who I am, and showing these off is a part of who I am, sort of thing. So I wonder if that could become an aspect of it. We'll see.
Well, a lot of the art that I collect ends up as lock screens on my phone, desktop backgrounds. I see a lot of people posting pictures on Twitter of their Apple watches with the latest NFT that they've either created themselves or collected. So I think more and more as these things enter, and every now and then I'll turn on my phone and someone will be like, "Oh, that's a cool picture." Like it's different. It's not the landscape or the generic Apple background or some kind of thing. It's an artwork, and it's a conversation starter. And I think that's what artwork's really good at, right? Is kind of bringing people together who kind of share a similar taste or a similar vibe. I guess much in the same way that you were describing yourself and Sun Min connecting over that book from your childhood. You know, that's a
Right.
cultural thing that's you know wormed its way in visually, and the storytelling and everything. And you found a like-minded person out there who also relates, and I love that. And I think the fact that the artwork exists, but it's also existing on an interconnected network of potentially millions, if not billions, of people, is helping us to find those like-minded individuals and share those stories. And like you said, by releasing rights, or having no copyright on some of your artwork,
Right.
imagine where that goes, where the ideas of like-minded people who are involved in the communities, and discussions happen, and next thing you know, Uma's turned into a charity or a foundation for teaching children NFT art. Or do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the potentials for all this are enormous, enormous. David, how much more time do you have? I'm just very conscious I could talk to you all day about this, but I know
Oh,
that you've got family and
right.
everything like that. So let me know if we need to wrap it up anytime soon.
No, no. Let's talk about soul pets, and then we can anything else that you want to cover for sure.
Well, we've got Soul Pets, and then there's Nooper. It might be nice just to
Oh,
finish
sure.
on Nooper as that's being
Sure.
released soon. But yeah, let's go into Soul Pets. So these are the Soul
Yeah.
Pets.
Yeah. So soul pets are more our our experiences in South Korea, and just um, kind of like a character version of various people that we've met along the way. Or well, there's first of all, there are these incredible pet shops in Seoul that have these. My wife and I are obsessed with Chihuahuas, dogs. We don't have 100 Chihuahuas or anything, but we only have one here, and we have two in Korea. Um, but if you've been to Korea, and if you've been to the pet shops in South Korea, they're truly fascinating. I don't know how they got these adorable Chihuahuas that look like characters out of a Korean or Japanese cartoon. They're absolutely adorable. So we started thinking about, like, well, kind of mixing the cryptozoological aspect of what we're interested in with those pet shops in Seoul. And so we thought about, like, a kind of like a first we started thinking about, well, what if there was like a pet shop in Korea that had these little adorable things, but they weren't just chihuahuas, that they were kind of like pets of those creatures. So then it sort of evolved into, well, pets look like their owners, and are these the owners? Um, then we thought about, are these kind of like soul pets, that they're your pet, meaning you collect the artwork, and then that's sort of like the totem for who's that, like that's the pet that you've collected, sort of thing. So it's the idea of what it meant to us evolved over time, quite a bit. But and then my friends are going to have to guess which one that they are, but they're based on, many of them are based on people we know, or just people we've seen out there during meetings, or just on the train, or you know uh, through through our experiences in Korea. Then we're going to do a little sub collection within Soul Pets. We'll do like maybe 10 or so called Tokyo Pets, of various characters that we've met, over there. Because a big part of living over in Korea was then taking a quick plane ride over to Tokyo and spending time there as well.
Fantastic. I do love these characters. I love how with just a few lines and some color, and I'm not meaning to overly simplify it at all, but the amount of expression and kind of goofiness or anxiety, like you were saying earlier, and just the amount of emotion in just a few lines and some color that you and Samin are able to get across is just brilliant. I love it.
That guy specifically is a jackalope, which we
Mhm.
came across one. We're driving across the country. I forget which state. I believe it was. Yeah, I believe it was northern Texas, and there was a kind of gas station stop where you can stop and get food, and or it was even a trucker stop where you can, take a shower and get a hot meal, etc. And there was a glass cabinet that had a rabbit, like a taxidermy sort of rabbit, like a deceased rabbit, but very well preserved. And then he had the two horns coming out of his head, and it was labeled as a jackalope. And jackalopes are a big part of cryptozoology. That's like Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster, Jersey Devil, Mothman, Flatwoods, jackalope. So we were fascinated by finding one in the real world, right?
That's brilliant.
In that capacity anyway. And so very inspired by jackalope, and there he is.
There it is. All right, let's move over to Nupa. Am I saying that correctly?
Oh yes, yes, yes. Nupa is an old toy line we made 20 years ago. He was a series of, I think, about 30 or so little minifigures that came out at the Taipei Toy Festival. I believe they launched in 2002. At the Taipei Toy Festival was very small back then, but has become the place if you're interested in non-mass market, independent toys, toys made by independent artists. That's kind of like the place where you go congregate every November and see everybody from all over the world, especially from all over Asia, comes to see their creative heroes who, it's the one place where you've got almost everybody under one roof in the design and toy world. And so we launched them at the Taipei Toy Festival back then. And then we had another company in the US import them with new packaging for US retailers. And they just did phenomenally well for us. It was a big surprise. They weren't really I think we thought we would end up making like 100 of each, and they just kept going for many years. And then we decided we wanted to kind of make sure that Nupa lived on. We didn't have any plans for him to make him into a show. We weren't really going to make any more Nupa things. Our desire to make physical things in general has tapered. Other than a few small plastic things at these special factories in Japan, where it's more about the craft and the place where we make the thing, and the historical significance of these factories in Japan. Outside of that, we don't really have this big desire to produce more things. But we did want to preserve Nupa, but we also wanted to also release him to the world and see what would happen if we did so. So now, not just this artwork, but all Nupa that you can find. If you can dig out, if you can find those old toys from 20 years ago, and if you want to use those as models for something that you want to make, you go right ahead. These are also completely, free to use, with the same disclaimer: making things is very expensive, and please be careful. Just financially, like making little pins and buttons, I would say not a big deal. If you want to put images on these services where you can make mugs, right, fairly easily, I don't think there's much risk in it. But producing anything in a factory, just please watch out. But yeah,
that's a good caveat.
So we're going to release as NFTs all of the main characters, and then each NFT will come with a big file that has all of the artwork. You'll get at least one pose of every main character from the series to use as you wish, as ever you see as you see fit.
So that would mean that the Uma characters that we can see on the right there, the Nupa characters, and now all the Soul Pets, I believe you've also released into the wild to find there.
And we'll do the same thing with the trading cards that are or trader cards, we call them. I don't know who's going to be trading. We'll see. But the cards that are on the way will also be in the same, under the same conditions.
Incredible. I'm so excited to see the ideas that come out of this, and where these characters go, because I guess characters have such a I don't know, like a deep connection with us, right? Like I put out a tweet the other day just saying that, the characters of the future, the Mickey Mouses, the He-Mans, the Supermans, the Wonder Womans, all of them, they're all being born on chain at this very moment in time. These are
That's
the
right.
characters that our children and grandchildren probably will grow up with and see evolve over time into, the way we grew up with the Adam West Batman, and it turned into that, that film series that was just incredible, and that evolution. But imagine like where pixel punks will go, crypto punks, and
Oh
where
yeah.
Spider Boom and where the Jersey Devil and all these kinds of amazing characters, and not to mention the other thousands of NFT creators out there. Some of the things I've been
Oh
collecting
yeah.
recently, just blowing my mind. And you see the potential, and look, they might go nowhere, they might go somewhere, but they're happening now. I think the future is
Oh yeah.
happening now, and we are creating our own stories and our own connections with these characters in this moment, and that's incredible.
I desperately want Cart Lads toys so very much, like the kind of like 16-bit bouncing old cartridges from all the various systems.
Yeah, they're so cool.
I've got to have them, and I hope that somebody makes them. Whether it's even if it's Funko, it doesn't matter. Just anybody out there who would make such a thing. So there's still room, at least in our heart, for physical objects. Like when we saw those, we thought, oh, we want to display those on our desk somehow. Maybe it's just the old desire from the old way of doing things that we still sometimes, when there's something really special, we want to hold it in our hands as toy makers, right? Um, but even if nothing else came of it, just the thrill of looking in your collection, in your wallet, there's something about that too. There is really something real about looking at it in your wallet, and then something clicks in the brain where these are yours, and you own this piece, and it's very difficult to explain, but very easy to feel. And once you have felt it and you connect with someone else who gets it, you understand right away what it is. There's just something new that unlocks in the brain that when you get it, you get it.
100%. And I
Exciting.
would urge anyone to buy an NFT, just one. You can go onto the Tezos blockchain, and for cents or even a couple of dollars in a few seconds,
That's
it's
right.
not that hard to set up. There are YouTube tutorials on how to do it. Create a wallet, buy something on Coinbase or whatever, send it across, click buy. But that feeling, like David just described, when I bought my first NFT, it was that moment where you go, oh, I get it. It didn't take long. You're like, oh, I get it. And it
Yeah.
felt good. And then 200 NFTs later, I was watching the
Yeah.
market crash yesterday, and I'm like, oh, I should just buy another NFT while this is happening. Oh, just another. It's
Yeah.
like, Alex, what are you doing?
I tried. I right away thought, oh, we have to buy some now to show support for this kind of amazing ecosystem. And then there was so much volatility, and that the gas fees just to buy one during that whole cascade was unbelievable. Like I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I
No,
think it's settled down, but there is something
fingers crossed.
very yeah. There's something very real and special about it, and
Hmm.
it just has to click for you. It's not something that you can even really be told. It's like the Matrix. No one can tell you what it is.
There is no spoon.
It's but this whole world is very real to us, and I think the human connection has made it more real than so much of the other work that we're very fortunate that we've been able to participate in and do, but that this feels the virtual work and the world that goes with it feels the most real to us. Now, it's got to be I think the human connection, and I highly recommend anyone sitting on the fence to go to Twitter, dust off that Twitter account, and just kind of look around and see what happens. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. Really, it's pretty special.
Yeah,
And anyone who's out
agreed.
there, thank you for even looking at what it is that we do. We're just here to absorb and to learn as much as we can while we can. And it's been an incredible experience. And to everyone out there from this world who's been extremely patient with us uh, and really really helpful. Just thank you for giving us all that time that you have. And man, we just learned a lot. It's been an amazing ride. Pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, look, I'm just so stoked to have spent the last, I think, couple of hours with you here and
Oh,
listening to the
of
story and
course.
sharing it with everyone online. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to what we're discussing, or?
No, just to say thank you very much for reaching out and asking for me to do this with you. This was a real pleasure,
Oh,
and I think that
no problem.
this this world that we've discovered is in the first quarter of 1%, and there's so much. I mean, it's just I think that this really is a form of the future, and I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much for joining, and thank you to Sun Min as well, who has obviously put in a lot of love and care into this whole journey with you, and is now sharing it with kind of all of us. It's just fantastic. I'm just really glad to provide a space where we can go a bit more in depth, because it does move very quickly on Twitter and in the cryptoverse in general, and just to actually be able to spend a bit of time soaking up the art and the stories behind it, because really that's what, to me, it's all about anyway. It adds so much more value when you know the person behind the creation. And
Oh, of course.
I feel like hopefully we got to know you, and by extension Sunmin as well, and then by further extension the whole universe of characters that have been with you all this time. So thank you very much, David.
After
Appreciate
all
it very
that, if you
much.
still want to collect our stuff after this, then really thank you. Thank you, really.
So just quickly, where can people find you on Twitter?
Oh, I'm at David and then the letter Z, like zebra, and then Horvath, Horvath. Twitter is the best. I don't really. I still check Instagram for messages, etc. But I've completely dropped off of all other aspects of digital life other than Twitter, and then how Twitter relates to this incredible new world. It's just incredible. I'll probably stay away from commenting on NFT articles, but other than that, I really love it. Right.
Awesome. All right.
Sorry
Well,
about
thanks to
all
everyone who watched today.
the.
Thank you. All right. I think we're good. Thank you so much for your time again, David. And thanks to everyone for
Thank you.
watching
Great to
for
see you.
this long conversation. Hope you got a lot out of it. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.